What's up everybody, another beautiful day indeed, Dragonflight, and today I'll be going over one of the new Storm builds that works extremely good for M+, and it's a hell of a good time to play, the Storm Cleave. Now if you ever wondered what a Sith Lord feels like, this is it. Now there's also been a lot of updates to our talents and abilities going into 10.1, and I have videos out covering all of our changes, how they impact us, as well as how our new tier set bonus works. So I recommend checking those out if you want to know more about that. And I also have other build guides for M+ and raids out as well. Now in essence, this build pretty much works like the Storm single target build. The only difference is that we shift points out of Elemental Blast, Molten, and Elemental Assault in favor of Crash Lightning and Crashing Storm, enabling us to pump out an absurd amount of AoE damage on top of doing extremely good single target damage, as there's not a huge gap between pure single target Storm build and this. Please don't nerf. One big downside though, this build, Enhancement overall,
is not for the weak and frail.
Since 10.1, I've been forced to wear a compression glove and wrist guard. I'm not even kidding.
You have been warned.
Now with that out of the way, let's go over the build. So first of all, you want to get all the Wind Fury talents, Forceful Unruly Winds to increase our Wind Fury damage by a ton. And Doom Winds massively increases our chance to proc Wind Fury from our Wind Fury proccing abilities. For us, that's Stormstrike, Ice Strike, Sunder, and Crash Lightning. Crash Lightning being the big one. This gives us a huge upswing in Maelstrom during, as well as Wind Fury damage. Then we also get Storm's Wrath for even more Wind Fury and Stormbringer procs. Moving on to Improved, Raging and Overflowing Maelstrom, increasing our Maelstrom spender damage, and we can have and spend up to 10 stacks of Maelstrom rather than 5. So our spenders slap harder, and to be fair, on AoE you can generate 10 Maelstrom on a global, so only being able to have 5 would be very sad indeed. And like I said before, we will skip Lava Lash altogether.
Drama!
Instead we go for Ice Strikes and Wind Fury Totem. Wind Fury Totem buffs our damage as well as our group, and Ice Strike is mainly a filler that's able to proc Wind Fury, so it's great for single target, so bosses. Lava Lash does not proc Wind Fury, which is why we take Ice Strikes instead of this. And we don't need that pesky Flame Shock spread. Then we'll be getting Storm Flurry, Storm Blast, Converging Storms, and 2 points in Legacy of the Frost Witch. This build is still very Stormstrike centered, both on AoE and single target, so Storm Flurry gives it a 25% chance to slap again for 40% of its normal damage. This just increases Stormstrike's value, more Wind Fury procs, and Maelstrom gen, and anytime you Stormstrike on AoE, it triggers Crash Lightning, which in turn procs everything else. Then we have Storm Blast. Stormbringer procs gives your next Stormstrike 25% additional damage as nature damage, so it scales with our mastery, since it's nature damage, with more gear and a new tier set bonus. This adds a considerable amount of damage per Stormbringer proc, which is great for funneling damage into a bigger mob in a pack, or just overall single target damage on packs and bosses. Converging Storm is pretty much the same thing. We always Crash Lightning, so you will always get value from this, and we just funnel that into a mob. Less valuable on single target though. Legacy of the Frost Witch. Spending 10 Maelstrom resets Stormstrike, and at 2 point it also increases our physical damage by 25% for 5 seconds. And this is pretty much up 100% of the time on AoE. And we do be doing a lot of damage with Wind Fury on AoE, so this is great. Now to make it even more fun, we get deeply rooted elements with the updated Static Accumulation and Thorim's Invocation. So anytime you Stormstrike, you have an ever increasing chance to proc Ascendance. So there's a lot less RNG behind this proc now. Static Accumulation gives us 20% chance to refund Maelstrom spent on Chain Lightning and Lightning Bolt. And during Ascendancy procs, we generate 2 Maelstrom every second. Now the big thing here is the refund. This goes crazy with this build. Since you're constantly Chain Lightning, you're constantly refunding. Then we have Thorim's Invocation, which increases Chain and Lightning Bolt damage by 20% at all time. And during Ascendance, Wind Strike, which replaces Stormstrike, spends up to 5 Maelstrom in either Chain Lightning or Lightning Bolt, whichever you cast last. And like I said earlier, we of course get Crash Lightning and Crashing Storms. Crash Lightning deals a ton of damage with this build on AoE, but more importantly generates an absurd amount of Maelstrom for us. Crashing Storm just improves that with more crash damage, and Chain Lightning hits 2 more targets, which is the big thing. And for this build, Crash and Chain Lightning is your bread and butter.
The Storm Tier Strike.
It is what makes this build works as well as it does. Now to tie all of this together, Sundering, which can proc Wind Fury, but more importantly it also activates our new tier set bonus, if you have it, giving us 24% mastery, 20% fist fire damage for 15 seconds, and 2 chain lightnings that deal 100% increased damage and refunds 50% maelstrom spent. And you can also proc static on top of that, refunding all of it. So Sundering becomes a big old pump cooldown all of a sudden. Slap it down on a pack and watch him melt. Now this is where I would fade to footage of me melting a pack with the new 4 set. However, seeing as I only got one piece, you instead get to watch a 5-second clip of what our hex targets looks like IRL. We also get elemental weapons for that 10% fire, frost, and nature damage. And lastly, we get feral spirit with Witch Doctor's ancestry and alpha wolfies. So Witch Doctor's ancestry increases our maelstrom generation, but more importantly, maelstrom generated reduces feral spirit cooldown by 2 sec per maelstrom generated. And this works even if you're capped on maelstrom. And alpha wolfies, anytime you crash or chain lightning, you activate their AoE, if you will. So they deal damage to all nearby enemies instead of just the one. And this is uncapped AoE. And we do be generating an unethical amount of maelstrom on AoE, so it's pretty much perma wolfies, often quad wolfies. So how does all of this work? Well, if I were to TLDR it, chain lightning if you're capped on maelstrom, otherwise crash lightning. If no crash, then Stormstrike. That's it. And more often than not, you're just shifting between crash and chain lightning, crash, seal, crash, seal, then spam Stormstrike for a few globals. And anytime you Stormstrike, you also trigger crash lightning AoE, doing a ton of damage, generating maelstrom, Stormbringer procs, all that good stuff. So we dish out an absurd amount of chain lightnings, and due to static accumulation, every chain lightning has a 20% chance to refund all maelstrom spent on it. And when it refunds 10 maelstrom, that lowers feral spirit cooldown by 20 seconds. I can tell you it's very satisfying when you pop feral spirits, then refund 5 chain lightnings in a row and knock off a minute of your wolfie cooldown. Does that happen often? No, but when it does... But regardless, it does proc a lot, and it is tons of fun. Unlimited power! But let's break down the AoE and single target priority just so you have all the details, even though most of the time it really is just chain, crash, Stormstrike on AoE. So you want to do feral spirit on cooldown, chain lightning if at 10 maelstrom, wind fury totem if it's not up. Wind fury is a very big part of our damage and maelstrom generation, so this is important to keep up. Doom winds on cooldowns, sundering with doom winds up, crash lightning with doom winds up or no crash buff active, wind strike if ascendance procs, sundering if you have no doom winds, crash lightning, Stormstrike ideally with the crash buff up, then you ice strike, chain lightning if you're at 5 stacks of maelstrom, and that's pretty much it. If you can't do any of that, just refresh wind fury totem or something. And nothing changes in this prio with the new 4-piece bonus on AoE. Now just remember that doom winds only increases your chance to proc wind fury to pretty much 100%, so you need to maximize number of wind fury generating abilities you use during it. On AoE, that's sundering and crash lightning. So for example would be pop doom winds, crash lightning, sundering, chain lightning, crash lightning, chain lightning, and then either crash storm or chain lightning depending on what's available. And the reason you weave in chain lightning here is because it lowers crash cooldown, so allows us to fit more of them in a doom wind. Oh, and ideally always follow up feral spirit with crash or chain lightning so their AoE is active. This is true for single target as well. So moving on to single target, it's back to storm striking for fame and fortune. So the prior here is feral spirits and doom winds on cooldown, sundering to proc 2 and 4-piece bonus, crackling thunder if you have them, otherwise sundering becomes more of a filler. Stormstrike, wind strike on cooldown, meaning whenever you're able to stormstrike, use stormstrike, even if you're capped on maelstrom. Pop wind fury totem if it's not up, chain lightning if crackling thunder, the 4-piece bonus from sundering, is up. Otherwise you want a lightning bolt at 5 plus maelstrom. Then you want to ice strike and or crash lightning if doom winds is active, flame shock if it's not active, ice strike, frost shock, etc. Now if you've seen my single target storm guide, this is that rotation, and the TLDR to put it into perspective, storm strike until you can't storm strike. Then you spend Maelstrom to reset Stormstrike. If you can't Stormstrike or spend Maelstrom, press something else until you're able to Stormstrike again. Rinse, repeat. And something else more often than not is either Ice Strikes or Crash Lightning. Also, pro tip, very handy macro. You can macro in Totemic Projection into Stormstrike, which is great to increase uptime without having to manually refresh it all the time as you move around. So the macro I use looks like this. Totemic Projection is not on the global cooldown, so you can project while slapping Stormstrikes. And lastly, I really recommend the addon Hekili. It's a rotation helper addon, and it shows you what you should be pressing next, and it's very accurate. So it's incredibly helpful for players who are new to Enhancement to help put the rotation priority into play. I mean, I use it to this day, might not be looking at it blindly 24/7, and I do know what to press, but it's nice to have there in the corner of my eyes, and it helps free up some much needed
Brain space.
There's only so much up here. Now, as far as stats goes, haste, mastery, sim yourself. The Storm build tends to want haste over mastery, but you can't go wrong with both. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this build guide for the Storm build. Cleave M+. The blast is real. Yo, now let me know what y'all think of these guides. Any info you feel is missing, let me know. And if you really want to dig deep into everything Enhancement Shaman, I greatly recommend reading Word Up's Wowhead or Icy Vein Bible for Enhancement, as most of this is based off that, and he also goes a lot more in-depth into everything. And also a huge shout out to Leilana and Fabio from the Enhancement Shaman Discord for their help with the script. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. And don't forget the usual stuff, comment, like, subscribe, and make sure to ring that notification bell. Tons of guides in the works. And if you want to help support my work, check out my Patreon. As a patron, you get access to the Stankie Discord. You can also get shoutouts and videos, coaching, among other things. I also stream progression and testing on Twitch, occasionally M+, Stankie Gaming. Feel free to hop on by and spam me with questions. I love answering them and helping out. It's very fun. And yeah, thank you all for watching, and I will see you next time.
Stormstrike!